Most of her life, Charlie Ely was a good girl with very bad luck.
My parents didn't take good care of me the way they should have, so they lost custody.
From her earliest days, Charlie got used to feeling abandoned. By age 18, Ely was married to a 21-year-old with a record. Only 4 months after saying I do, Charlie's home life was again torn apart.
He was arrested for violating his probation and left her basically alone.
As she reveals in this exclusive interview, the lonely teenager quickly found a new family and a world of trouble that ended in murder.
I was one of the kids who was like, as soon as I turn 18, I'm gonna leave. Look at what happened. Not even a year later, where am I sitting? Our childhood, at the beginning it was like a little rough, and then it got a little better.
Around age 6, Charlie and her younger sister were taken in by their aunt and uncle.
To be honest, I think of my Aunt Lisa and my mom. I think of my Uncle Mike, my dad.
By all accounts, her life in Maryland was a typical teenager.
Jessica Lukey was Charlie's best friend in high school. The two girls were in the Naval Junior Officer Training Corps together.
She got along with everyone. She was very outgoing and just really relaxed. She didn't seem like she was the type of girl that would fall into the wrong crowd in high school.
Never had any fights according to her family. She was bullied a bit by some of her classmates because she had an eye problem. She was legally blind in one eye, and they picked on her a little bit for that.
Charlie looked forward to escaping her small Maryland town. An unexpected opportunity came up after Charlie graduated in the spring of 2010.
I moved from Maryland to come down to Florida to try to reconnect with my mother. I didn't listen to my Aunt Lisa and all them when they said, "Be careful, Charlie, why don't you just wait a couple of years and see where it goes?"
Charlie had another reason for moving to northern Florida. She was already forming a relationship with the son of her mother's boyfriend, 21-year-old Joseph David Burham.
I had a message from him, and I had just turned 18, so that made it even better. So I read his message and I got his number and I started texting him. It was July 13th when we first started texting, and we started dating that night. It went from there. It was great.
Ely arrived in Lakeland, Florida in August 2010 with the promise of a new boyfriend and reuniting with her estranged mother. As her relatives in Maryland predicted, Charlie's reunion was short-lived.
Well, I dove in. Was at my mom's for 2 or 3 days. I ended up being like, you know, Joe, I need to get out of this. I can't do it.
Despite the disappointment about her mother, Charlie's romance with Joe Burham heated up quickly. In early September, less than 2 months after Ely moved to Florida, she married Joe, even though he had a criminal record. His conviction for lewd and lascivious sexual battery restricted where the newlyweds could live.
He was on probation. He couldn't leave the county.
We found a place to live, and it was actually in Summerfield, Florida, which is still Ocala.
The honeymoon didn't last long. In January of 2011, Burham violated the terms of his probation and was sentenced to serve 3 years in prison.
I did feel pretty vulnerable. I'm 18. Husband just got arrested. What do I do now? I barely know anybody here.
On her own in an unfamiliar town, Charlie found a way to make new friends.
Charlie had a house. These other kids were able to get away from their parents and sort of hang out all together without any rules, really. They just did whatever they wanted to.
Charlie's home became a hangout for a tight group of local kids, including 20-year-old Justin Soto and 19-year-old Michael Bargo.
My husband had told me not to hang out with Michael Bargo or Justin Soto. I didn't listen to him. And I decided that I was gonna have them live with me.
Soon, Bargo's friends, 16-year-old Kyle Hooper and his 15-year-old sister Amber Wright, were also regulars at Charlie's house. According to court testimony, Amber was in the middle of a stormy breakup with her 15-year-old boyfriend, Seath Jackson.
Seath Jackson originally was dating Amber. Something transpired in their relationship where they separated, and then Seath was trying to come back into the picture with Amber.
During this time, Charlie and Amber became close.
Ely and Amber were best friends.
That friendship would be marked by violence.
And then I heard gunshots. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Coming up, the grisly details of a terrible death.
For such a brutal crime, it was almost professional, which is scary.
19-year-old Charlie Ely's reunion with her estranged mother fizzled, and her husband was locked up on a parole violation. On her own, in a new town, Charlie invited a group of teens into her home. Ely's new best friend, 15-year-old Amber Wright, had just broken up with her boyfriend, 15-year-old Seath Jackson.
All I knew was he was an ex of Amber's. Period. End of story.
According to police reports, on the night of April 17, 2011, Charlie helped lure Seath to her house.
Charlie had told us that when he arrived at the house that she actually opened the door for him.
I was like, hey, what's up? What do you need? He's like, oh, I want to talk to Amber. I was like, okay, come on in.
Seath had no idea what he was in for.
I wish I could have done something, but I couldn't.
According to court records, Seath tried to run out of the house. A neighbor reported seeing 3 male figures chase him and drag him back inside. Although the crime happened in her home, Charlie told police she had nothing to do with it.
I was like, holy cow. I ran into my room. I didn't know what to do. I heard a few gunshots, door slamming.
According to police reports, Seath was beaten and shot multiple times before he died. Then his body was set on fire. The day after the gruesome attack on Seath, his mother reported the 15-year-old missing. That night, police launched an investigation. On April 19th, 2 days after Seath disappeared, police brought Charlie and some of her friends in for questioning.
You know a lot more than what you're telling me. I know a lot more than what you're telling me. Can we agree with that?
Law enforcement has a good way to try to coax things out of you. Let's just put it that way.
I didn't trick her in any way for her to tell me the truth. You knew that Seath was never going to walk out of your house alive. Is that correct?
Yeah.
After more than 2 hours of questioning, Charlie was exhausted.
I'm all by myself once again.
The search led police to a remote lime rock pit where divers found 3 large paint buckets containing ashes and other remains. More burnt human remains were discovered in a fire pit at Charlie's home.
There was very little physical evidence of what had actually occurred there.
Forensic tests identified the victim as Seath Jackson.
For such a brutal crime, it was almost professional, which is scary.
Charlie, along with Michael Bargo, Justin Soto, Kyle Hooper, and Amber Wright, were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. All 5 pleaded not guilty. Ely's defense attorney, Jonathan Bull, requested a speedy trial for his client.
Mr. Bull was thinking that it would behoove her to just go ahead and get this done, maybe catch the prosecution off guard a bit.
Charlie's trial began in September 2011, 6 months after the murder. On September 23, 2011, the case went to the jury. It took a little more than an hour for jurors to reach a unanimous verdict. Charlie Ely was found guilty of first-degree murder.
The only time that there was any real emotion was when the jury handed down the verdict, when she broke down and sobbed.
A month later, Charlie was back in court to hear her sentence.
It is the judgment of the law and the sentence of the court that you spend the remainder of your natural life confined in the Florida Department of Corrections. A life sentence is imposed.
Ironically, while the 19-year-old will likely spend the rest of her days in prison, Charlie's husband, Joe Burham, is scheduled to be released in September 2012. Charlie will have to live with regret.
There's so many things that rush through my head that I wish I could have done. I could have, should have, would have done, but I didn't.
Amber Wright, Kyle Hooper, Michael Bargo, and Justin Soto maintain their innocence. They are currently awaiting trial for first-degree murder.
Advice I'd give other young women, listen to the people who love you. I had talked to my aunt a few times, and she wanted me to come up and live with her and come back up to Maryland. I never did that. I wish I would have, because I want to go home. I really want to go home.